I'm delighted now to introduce Deborah Copaken and to welcome her back to Maryland, where she grew up. I'll start by quoting her own website. For those of you who need the super short version of an author bio, here you go. Deborah Capacon is the New York Times best-selling author of Shutter Babe, The Red Book, and Between Here and April, among others. She's also been a war photographer, TV producer, screenwriter, and performer. Her most recent book is Ladyparts. That's where the quote ends, and yeah, super short bio. What that version doesn't tell us is that she won an Emmy for her news production and has been in many, many war zones. In fact, her website does provide what she calls the regular version of an author intro, which ends with a description of Ladyparts as a memoir of bodily destruction and resurrection during marital rupture. As I said, many, many war zones, including the home front. Ladyparts is a memoir that takes us on a very personal journey through the battleground of women's health. It covers about a decade packed with illnesses and traumas that, well, maybe a little more than half of the human race often experience, women. I connected on many levels with the sometimes witty, very intimate, and often poignant reflections of family and professional life. What I connected with most strongly was the weaving together of the personal with the political. Each time the author loses a body part, she highlights the corresponding social and political gaps and failings, sexism and ageism in the workplace, including the home workplace, misogynist medical practices, income inequality, unemployment. So the book's got blood and guts, literally, but not only that. It's also got love and romance, and do-it-yourself divorce, and some mystery. Who is that guy who responds so quickly with a real apology for date rape the night before she graduated from Harvard? Most of all, I enjoyed its radical honesty, inspiringly loud resilience, and heroic humor, even against the backdrop of a global pandemic, the battleground we still share. So please join me in welcoming Deborah Copaken and her interviewer today, Bethanne Patrick. Welcome.
Yes, you are.
That was an amazing intro, and unlike I've ever had, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I don't think there's any need for me to be here.
Yeah, well, let's go.
I'm just going to say one, I'll just tell you who I am really, really briefly, and then I'm going to say one thing about myself that ties into Deb, as I call her, Deb's book. My name is Bethanne Patrick. I'm a local literary critic and writer, and next year I actually have my own memoir coming out, and it's about, thank you, and I won't bore you with it, but mine, and this is what I said to Deb when we were in the green room, mine is about depression and mental illness, and it's almost like I've been through the wars in my own way with mental illness, the same way my friend Deb has been through the wars, real wars, and real conflict in all kinds of ways physically. And this is so interesting to me, Deb, because in reading this, over the years while these things were happening, we saw each other, we met. Yeah. I didn't know the half of it. I didn't know, and there's no reason I should have, okay? It's not like I was within the inner circle or needed to know, but damn, this woman is strong. And sorry? Oh, okay, thanks. Someone was raising his cap, and I wasn't sure what was going on. So that's one of the first things I want to ask you about, Deb, is you aren't through all of life's struggles. There are still things that are difficult going on in your life, like all of us. So to take a little cue from what happened with Catherine Schultz, how do you keep your memoir drawer separated? How do you keep your spoons and forks separated?
So she's talking about the last author that spoke here was talking about how she'd spoken to Anne Lamott and Anne Lamott had talked about trying to keep her spoons and her forks of her emotional life separate, and that they always end up in the same drawer. I think the answer is you just accept chaos. Like, I had a moment, I don't know why I'm talking about this now, it's not in the book, but I had a moment recently where I discovered infidelity in my last partner, and I fled to Greece with my friend Ayala because she said I have a free house, and I went off to Greece, and there was a moment where I was in the water and I was on a stand-up paddleboard, and I'm paddling out, and all of a sudden the wind shifted, and the wind started blowing me to the mainland. So I'm on an island called Spetses. I'm being blown to the mainland, and I'm trying to get back in. I'm paddling as fast as I can, and I can't get back in. And it was really, truly this moment of surrender, because I thought, okay, I'm just going to lie down on this paddleboard right now because I cannot do anything else. So I lay down on the paddleboard. I had the paddle on my chest. It was like, oh, I'm just like Jesus on the cross, only in the water. But like, and I gave up, right? I gave up and I gave into the chaos. And it has been a defining moment, because every time more chaos happens, because it will. Her book ended with "and." It always will, right? We're all hurtling headfast towards death. So it will always happen. Something will happen. And I will draw on that moment and say, okay, so I'm just going to lay down on my board for now and just wait for the wind to blow in the other direction. And it did. And I got up and I paddled back to shore, and my friends were fast asleep, had no idea that I'd gone through this tragedy.
Well, this is the perfect way for me to have you explain Ladyparts a little
Sure.
bit, because things started out for you in that very, Gen X good girl kind of way. You grew up, you went to high school, you went to college, you marry, you have children, on and on and on. And Ladyparts is about the chaos. So tell us about this memoir, whatever Fiona didn't say.
Right, okay. So first I think I should talk about the idea for the memoir, which came to me whole cloth in the shower one day, which was, I'd been through 16 years of adenomyosis, which is a disease of the uterus. It took 16 years for it to be diagnosed. I had, a hemoglobin of 7, which as women we're supposed to have 12. So I had my uterus out, and then my marriage broke up, and on the same day that I drove my son to college and my marriage ended, which was on the same day, I had a third thing, which I discovered a breast lump. It was sort of one thing after the other, and then my cervix had to come out, and then I nearly died from vaginal cuff dehiscence, which I had never heard of either, but it is. So after the cervix removal, the vaginal canal came undone. So the stitches holding it together, and my daughter, thank God, was 20 years old, happened to be home, found me wandering the apartment carrying a glass Tupperware container, putting giant pieces of myself in there because I thought they might not have to be put back inside me. And I kept saying to my daughter, I'm just going to put it in the fridge and go to sleep. And she said,
Mom, you're in shock.
Yeah. And then we took Uber Pool to the emergency room because I wouldn't let her call an ambulance because I was worried about the $4,000, $8,000 bill for that ambulance. Anyway, one day in the shower, I'm like, how do I put all these things in one book? There are too many. And then I thought, I looked down at my body, as I'm showering, and I saw all the different scars, because I have a bunch of them on my stomach. And I thought, oh my God, each one of these scars represents a moment in time and a chapter. And if I take each body part that was excised for me or in some way broke down, that those chapters will provide not only a good roadmap for a memoir, but each of those chapters also work metaphorically. So for example,
Exactly.
When I was getting my uterus out from adenomyosis, my mentor was Nora Ephron. So she reached out after Shutter Babe came out, and she called me, and I thought it was my friend joking. I thought it was our friend Meg pulling a fast one on me, but it was actually Nora, and she invited me out for lunch, and we had monthly lunches from 2001 until she died. She died as I was getting my uterus out, as my daughter got her period for the first time. So there was just this this kind of passing of the baton, these sort of giant metaphoric moments that if you put them in a novel, no one would believe. And so each body part became then sort of a metaphor for what else was going on. Oh boy, I gotta get some water.
You drink water, and I will say, first of all, thank you all for being here and for staying, because we really are going to go there with all the names of all the lady parts and everything. And we're going to go there with lots and lots of description. But the thing that, besides the metaphors, which are so powerful and so moving for anyone who has dealt with lady parts, but they also have to do with cultural relevancy and politics, because each one of the parts, and this doesn't just mean things that are specific to ladies, it also means Deb's heart, Deb's brain, Deb's health overall as she deals with the conundrum of health insurance throughout life and with concomitant with or without employment. And so one of the things I want to talk about is how you decided how much information to put in each chapter about our society and about the problems that other women face, along with your personal history, because that is a delicate balance. Your story is so powerful, and readers, in a way, you won't want to rip yourself from Deb's story. And fortunately, because she's a very fine writer, you don't have to. You integrate this all really well. So talk about that.
So I didn't set out to write a political memoir. I just didn't. And it became very apparent very quickly that it had to be a political memoir, because when I started digging into the research of, at a certain point in a woman's life, you think, can this only be happening to me? How is it, how have I gone through this and this and this? And then you dig in a little bit. I'm a journalist as well. I write for The Atlantic. You dig in a little bit to the research, and you realize, oh, either it's not just me, it's a million other women, or it could be other women, but there are no statistics on it. So I'll give you a perfect example. Vaginal cuff dehiscence, which I nearly died from. I was, the doctors told me had I gotten to the hospital an hour later, I would not be here. There's no national registry for vaginal cuff dehiscence. If you have any other disease, a male disease and some other female diseases, they register it in a hospital, and then there's a national registry so we can figure out how many incidences of these occur. The problem with what I had is most women die before they get to the hospital. And when they do get to the hospital's afraid of getting sued. So oftentimes it took me asking a million times to finally get the name of what I nearly died from. So that's one example. Another example, I had no idea, and maybe you don't either, that women over 35, when you give birth, you are 80% more likely to have an appendicitis than the general public. I didn't know that.
No idea.
I didn't know that. I had a baby at 40, and when he was 5.5, 6 months, I went to my primary care physician, who wasn't there, and as a woman would have been much better. This was a man. I didn't know. And I said, I have a really bad stomach ache. And he said, well, it's probably gas. I was like, no, I don't go to the doctor for gas. I have a really bad stomach ache.
Sometimes we want to, but...
Sometimes we want to. And I literally collapsed in his office. And I'm going to give you a visual, because I'm on the floor of his office, and he's standing over me like this. And he's like, come on, it can't be that bad. And then I said, can somebody help me get to the hospital? I need to go to the hospital. And he's like, well, if you must, why don't you just walk out? He didn't call an ambulance. I had to take somebody off the street, and I said, I'm in a lot of pain. I need a taxi. I'm in New York City. That person got me a taxi. Then I get to the emergency room, and I'm on the floor, and the guy there, who's the guard's like, get off the floor. I'm like, I am not getting off this floor because I cannot sit. But the politics and the lack of believing women and the lack of statistics and the lack of studies. I mean, my God, it should not have taken 16 years for adenomyosis to have been diagnosed in my uterus. It should not have taken that. So I couldn't not write a political memoir. Like last night, we all like came up to Adam's shift last night. We're fawning. He said, well, what's your book about? And I went, and I realized after, because you always realize afterwards, right? I realized like this is sort of the middle class Maid. That's
Yes.
what it is. It's like Maid is an amazing memoir. It's an amazing memoir of poverty, and yet middle class women who divorce are shoved into the same bracket at the same time. Like it's. At one point I had $18 in the bank and I couldn't buy apples because they would have taken up a third of my income.
Exactly. This is something, as you said, divorced women in a middle class income bracket without, and there is a lot in your book about why you didn't ask for alimony. There's a lot in your book about why women want to earn our own way. And that's one of the things that I found really ironic and really difficult about Ladyparts is not just you're not being believed when you're on the floor in pain, but that you're not being supported in any way by our society when you're trying to make it through. You work really hard, Deb. You have never shirked going out to work for any reason. You have tried different ways of being a writer, and being a journalist. And yet these ways never seem to work for women above 35 who are married, let alone divorced.
Well, I mean, I talk about this in the book. There was one moment where I was working at a company called themid.com, which used to be cafe.com, and I actually had Bethanne write some stories for us. And they were paying me $39,000 a year, which wasn't covered. I mean, I had 2 kids in college. I was paying all of it on my own. I just did it. I needed the health insurance. So, like, you're balancing out, okay, well, I'll take this job so I can get the health insurance. But I discovered that I, a single parent with 3 children, 2 of them in college, was earning $39,000. And the man sitting next to me, who I love, Peter, who went to my alma mater, was 2 years younger, knew my sister really well, he was earning $200,000. Pardon? Same job. Same job. And in fact, if you're going to be honest about it, my stories went viral and got into the New York Times, and I got us on all sorts of news shows, and his were beautiful, but they didn't go viral. So I am providing...
Mine didn't either.
I'm providing income for this publication and getting paid $39,000. And I had thought that number, like Sheryl Sandberg tells us to. I was like, I can't make it work on that. And they're like, well... And at that point, it was $18 in my bank account or a job. And that's what we're brought to sometimes. Just like, all right, we make these choices because we're in a desperate place. And women, particularly single mothers, should never be put in a desperate place. Often the desperate place was because of health insurance. Often that desperate place was because of health insurance or because I was ill and needed the health insurance and couldn't afford not to have health insurance. Or, my child, Leo, he had something called Kawasaki disease when he was 4 years old. Serious illness that can kill. It's the leading cause of heart attacks in children under the age of 5. So I couldn't afford to be without health insurance. And I was just telling Bethanne, and I'm not going to go into the details of it, but after this book was published, a woman called me who has means, and I have a patron now. My health insurance is paid by a wealthy patron, which is lovely.
Thank you.
But shouldn't be the case. We should be like Canada. We should be like France. We should be like Germany. We should have a national health care. And I can't tell you the relief I have now that I can just do my freelance work. I have a Substack now. It's gaining readers. I'm earning money on it. I would not be able to do any of my freelance work right now if I hadn't had this odd patron from Ladyparts for my health insurance. This shouldn't be the case.
And the irony, and this really shouldn't be the case, not only is Deb's Substack about women's health, but those articles that have been going viral for different places for years now are about women's health, are about income disparity, are about what do we do when we don't have enough to take care of ourselves and our families. So this is something that you have not been, it's not like you've been silent about this. It's no.
Well, so one of the reasons I started the Substack was that I write for The Atlantic, I've sometimes written for the New York Times, I've sometimes written from the Washington Post, and these were stories that I was pitching to those major newspapers that were not getting taken. So I thought, I've got to have a place for all these things that I find out about women's health that nobody else is publishing. And lo and behold, there's a market for it. And I was telling Bethanne, I have a new boyfriend and who started his own newspaper that did very well. And he said to me when he saw the statistics of my readership, he said, why aren't you charging for this? I was like, well, I don't want to charge for it. He goes, no, you're filling a need, and you should be paid for that. And so if anyone doesn't know what a Substack is new. It's a way for writers to reach readers like you on our own. It's reader-supported, and it's been kind of revolutionary for me because I can finally get the word out without having to go through an intermediary, without going through an editor who's younger than me and doesn't care about middle-aged women. And it's been, kind of life-giving in a way.
It must be really frustrating to see people respond so much to some parts of your work and not to others, and to see that lack of care for middle-aged women. And to me, it seems middle-age definitely starts at 35. Shutter Babe was such a huge bestseller. It's something that people are still reading, people are still commenting on. It's not as if right now you're going out to war zones. You have 3 children, kids to get through college. So finding that niche audience, finding that way to talk to people is really important. And I find it so frustrating that it has to be through journalists making their own way. But Substack sounds like it's not really tough, like it's not full of hurdles, is what I'm trying to say.
No, yeah, Substack just eases the way. It sets up your payment, it sets up everything so you're just writing. And so when I have an idea, like the other day I read a report that said that women who have been on HRT or were given an HRT, hormone replacement therapy, which is estrogen, women who were put on estrogen within 6 months of a COVID infection lived versus those who weren't. People who were not on HRT died at much greater rates, or women who were not on HRT died at much greater rates. I've discovered a lot about vaginal estrogen, about hormone replacement, and I know there's a lot of men in the audience, but it helps you guys too. So
yes,
it does. And we need to talk more about sexual health in middle age and what that means for a marriage. And one urologist put it to me this way: we're giving men Viagra, and then we're not giving anything to the women. And you know why there's a lot of divorces and those men are marrying younger women? Because nobody's thinking about the other side of the problem.
Right.
Anyway.
Right, absolutely. And speaking of nobody thinking about the other side of the problem, Ladyparts is also dual, not just in metaphor, not just in politics, but also in your health life and your personal life.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of things that are happening to you physically. At the same time, you have a marriage that lasts for a long time. You have 3 children, and that's the marriage is falling apart. But as we all know, children, we're not going to let them fall apart. Children are really important, and you needed to be a parent for those children. And unfortunately, you had a spouse who disappeared for the most part.
So my marriage broke up in 2013. It had been breaking up for a long time. This is the final death knell, which actually had a lot to do with my hysterectomy, because he just couldn't be there, wasn't there. And so the marriage broke up in 2013, and my ex-husband moved across the country and started a business with the last of our marital income. And I was left in New York with 3 kids. One was in college, one was about to go to college, and a baby who was 7. and I had to make it work by myself, and it was tough going. He was gone for 3 years, and I was trying to date.
In the midst of all of this.
And dating was like, do I have an hour? Maybe I can meet you for coffee, and then it was near impossible. But I did try, and like 2014 was when Tinder came about, and all those apps that made it just slightly easier. And so there's a little bit of sort of madcap in the book, madcap dating of, what it's like to be dating in your late 40s, early 50s.
Well, I thought that was something that was also really important, is that you say at one point, yes, I was a woman with a body that needed to work, but I was also a woman with a body that needed touch and release. And I thought, why should you even have to declare that? I mean, I'm glad you declared it.
I had to declare that because the reaction to Shutter Babe was so intense that I've had to kind of keep that in the back of my mind. So when Shutter Babe came out, it was about essentially being a young woman in my 20s, going through war zones, and also learning to love, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because that's what all women do in their 20s. You're dating. That's what happens. And a journalist from Talk Magazine, the now defunct Talk Magazine, which was Tina Brown's magazine, wrote in what was supposed to be just like a profile, I ask her if she's worried if her frankness will get her labeled a slut. I ask her if she's worried if her frankness will get her labeled a slut. Now, if that came out now, Twitter would be all a Twitter, and it would, that journalist would be shot down. But slut shaming at the time was par for the course, and it still is par for the course. I mean, even this book, and it's not slut shaming per se, but so the New York Times reviewer, who was the gender editor of the New York Times at one point, not anymore, wrote that she found my blood clots to be gross. Or the way she phrased it was something like, is it anti-feminist of me to find these blood clots gross? And it's like, okay, are you worried that somebody's going to call you slut? Is it weird for me to call, you're basically saying the thing that you're saying by putting it in rhetoric. And it's the same thing.
Yes, it's the same thing. It's
Yeah.
absolutely the same thing. Speaking of the photo of the blood clots, which I found essential to the book.
Yeah, you got to see what it looks like.
You got to see what it looks like. There are a lot of photos in the book, many of them by you, a few by other people. And in thinking about the book, I wondered, how did you picture it? Because you're so visual. You're a photographer. You are a writer and a journalist, but you're also a photographer, an artist, a visual artist.
So I wasn't. Oh, we have 15 minutes now?
Do we have 5 minutes in the whole thing?
No.
Oh. It's like,
Q&A.
oh,
Okay. I'll answer this one question.
Yes.
So, wait, what was the question again?
about how you pictured the book in. Oh, okay, yeah.
Aging brain.
Yours and mine, baby.
I don't think at the beginning that I thought about like Shutter Babe had photos, and that was an obvious trope, right? You're going to put photos in a book that's about war photography. I didn't think I was going to put photos in this one, but then again, I didn't realize that I was describing another war, and that war required imagery. And so the photos just made their way in because I had them, and because I'm always shooting photos, and because I was so excited when the iPhone came about, because now I always had a camera with me. And I shoot I just shot something that, I shoot all the time. I can't not shoot. I think once it's in your blood, it's in your blood.
Absolutely. Did that help you structure the book? Did that help you think about it? Or was it more that you thought about it as a writer and then included the photos that had meaning?
The latter. I don't think the structure really were the body parts, and then the photos were just kind of the molasses on top. Yeah.
You know, I have to say, this is because of the cover of Ladyparts, and if you haven't seen it, it's so fantastic. I'm sorry I don't have the copy right here with us, but I had a writing instructor who is also DC based, Mary Kay Zaravlev. Thank you, Ladyparts. There you go.
Thank you, guys.
Superwoman. And for one book she wrote that was called, oh gosh, was it Man on Fire? Man Alive by Mary Kay Zaravlev. And she actually made a doll of her main character because he had so many things going on medically that it helped her with the structure of the book to have this part, that part, and all that sort of thing. And so I thought, oh, I would love a little Superwoman of Deb.
Well, here's the story of that cover. So the first cover they showed me was a diva cup. And women in here may or may not know what a diva cup is. It's what you capture period blood in, and a lot of the younger women use it these days. But
highly environmentally friendly.
it's great. It's great. Like my daughter went to the Peace Corps, no tampons allowed. You had to take a diva cup. Anyway, so the cover was a diva cup with flowers coming out of it. And I was like, okay, I don't have a uterus anymore. Like, I can't tell you how many times a doctor has said to me, when was your last menstrual period, while looking at the word hysterectomy on my chart. Anyway, so the diva cup was not a right idea. And they said, well, do you have an idea? I was like, well, I was thinking about it in terms of like a butcher, you know, the butcher signs where they like divide the pig into various parts of the pig. And they're like, well, can you show us what you mean? And I said, okay. So I went online and I found some butcher imagery.
Right.
And then I just literally stood up in my bedroom. It was COVID. And I just took a picture of me standing like that. And they just used the outline of me and created that.
Perfect.
And then had the like little body parts. So that's how that cover came about.
I love that. By the way, also, some of you may know this, but if you do the Wonder Woman stance for a certain number of seconds in the morning, it is supposed to actually psychologically change your attitude for the day.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, there's my help tip for this. But now we are into the question time, and so I know lots of you will want to ask them. The mic is over here. We're moving it closer.
Take that opportunity.
All right, you're second.
Please talk into the mic so all of us can hear.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm going to take an opportunity to say a couple of things. Number one, the feminist comment about it not being feminist or not being supporting that, I think it's just not human. The comment about the blood clots.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with
Not human,
feminist.
that's right.
Yeah, no, it was a really weird.
Yeah, and your other comment about your boyfriend saying that what you were doing should be paid, it's adding value. I think that's an issue with women in general
Totally.
because so many things that women do historically are not paid.
Totally.
So my question to you is, what is it that we can do to help younger women particularly, and maybe all women, understand that they add value and that they should be paid for what they're doing?
I mean, that's going to take systemic change, right? That's systemic change from the top down, but also, I mean, to be fair, I started the Ladyparts Substack as kind of like an add-on to the book. I thought it was sort of good as the book was coming out, and I didn't even know how to dig down into the data, and so this boyfriend of mine dug down into the data, and he's like, "You have a lot of like you gotta monetize this." But I should have known how to dig down into the data. I should have said to myself, I am finding a niche market that nobody else is addressing right now. But I also want to say this, that I have fought to be paid for what I'm worth. And the problem with journalism right now is that the journalism industry has collapsed. So there are no more magazines paying you $2 a word. Like, at The Atlantic, when I write an article and I spend 3 months writing it, I get $700. No matter how long I write on it, $700 for an article. So it makes more sense for me these days to do a Substack article because I will get more income from that. So there's a bunch of things that have to change. One of them, we have to have childcare because that's the number one issue facing women once they have children. We do not have subsidized childcare. And a good example of this is my friend Marion, who was my best friend in Paris when I lived there. We had kids around the same time. Marion had 6 months of paid leave, after which she put her daughter Lulu in a crèche, which is a daycare, for which she paid $5 a day. And she earned a lot of money as a top editor at Parry Match, but that was like at the top echelon. It was a sliding scale. She was paying essentially 25 euros a week for her daughter's childcare, and we pay so much more than that. We don't have paid maternity leave, right? So already you take time off to breastfeed your child, and you're already in debt by the time you're finished breastfeeding that child 6 months later, a year later, because you're not earning money at that time. And when I was breastfeeding my 2 older children, I was the primary wage earner at the time. So we got into debt because I was breastfeeding, right? We have to change the health insurance part of this, right? So to get women to claim their piece of the pie, we need to create a system in which women can work and mother and be good partners and all of that.
And not worry about our health and have someone listen to us when we're in pain. And I know we should move on to your question. And I've got another one over there and then another one here. So
I love this book so much.
Thank you so much.
I've turned 1 million people onto it. My
Good.
book group
See,
is
that's how
reading
it
in
happens.
September. But I want to tell you, I almost didn't read it because, and I brought it up to demonstrate. It's on. I had just had a hysterectomy, and it was 2 weeks, which is when what you had tends to happen.
Right.
It's on page 3 with your. I went like this.
Yeah.
I went in the other room. I put it down, and then my friend who recommended it said, "Oh no, you'll get past that." So fortunately, I went back and read it.
Yeah.
But my question is, because it freaked me out.
Yeah.
And so I was curious why you would start, it's on page 3,
Right.
that you started off with this horrendous thing so people, because I slammed it shut and went and put it on a bookcase. So why would you, in page 3, freak people out? That's my question.
I don't think that I thought that I was going to freak people out. Yeah. I mean, I'm actually, I have been surprised by the reaction to this book in the same way. You know, when you're writing a book for you. You're not if you write it for like this reader and that reader and that reader, you're never going to write a book. Like I'm writing a book that I would like to read. So for me, it's kind of like the bloody truth, stripped bare of any sort of niceties, is what I like in literature. So I wrote the book that I wanted to read, and I also wanted to start in medias res. Like here was the worst part, the worst moment, and then I'm going to explain to you how we got here and how we moved on from here. So that was always the plan, and I'm sorry I freaked you out. Yeah.
next question was over here. Someone had you had your hand up, ma'am? Oh, okay.
Oh.
Next.
Okay.
Eve and I went to college together, by the way. Hi, Eve. Nice to see you.
So we've had a similar trajectory: high school, college, marriage, kids, divorce, single moms of 3, putting kids through college. And I guess I feel like the system is just broken, and it is all chaos. And I'm lucky. I mean, I think we are the lucky ones. I mean, at least, you know, my mom helps. I have a federal job and all that. But it just is broken. And I don't really have the bandwidth to think creatively, but I was curious if you had any examples of sort of people in similar situations thinking outside the box, like other ways of doing it, because I feel like, you know, we were on this trajectory of doing everything right, and many people are, and then it still doesn't work. So are there other
Deb
ways?
needs to call her boyfriend, Adam.
Well, I mean, again, we need systemic change. Like, when you're saying, are there other examples? Of course, I think of Marion, and I think of my friends in Germany, and I think of my friends in Canada. Like, there are plenty of examples of how to do this. They're right there across the border and across the Atlantic. We know how to do this. We just don't. And it's no surprise to me right now that we're dealing with the destruction of Roe versus Wade. I mean, we have a country that wants women barefoot, pregnant. They want to return the clock back to some idealized 1950s time when, you know, the mother's in the pretty dress and you come home and she gives you your martini. And, like, that's just not, we're never going back there. We are going to go back there, I think, because Roe versus Wade is going to be destroyed. So we're going to have to figure, like, we're going to have to get, all the men are just going to have to get vasectomies. That's what's going to have to happen.
Thank you so much. Other questions? Right here.
Yeah.
Hi. So the reason I picked this session to come to was I'm pretty sure I read an article recently that you wrote about HRT.
Yes.
And
I wrote 2 or 3, I think.
well, I saw one of them, and that's something of interest to me, and in particular with regard to brain health and women aging. So I was wondering if you had anything more to say about that, but particularly if that's going to be a area that you're involved with.
Very good question. So
Thank you.
Thank you. I wrote an article for The Atlantic about Alzheimer's and estrogen and the link between estrogen loss and Alzheimer's, which I learned from a professor / physician up in Columbia. A urologist here in DC, take this name down if you're interested, Dr. Rachel Rubin. She's here in Bethesda. She just opened up her own practice. She's in her 30s. She's an activist, feminist, amazing woman. I've become good friends with her over Zoom and Twitter. We've never met in person, but we talk often. And what she told me was life-changing. So there's a few things that we all need to know. One, women under the age of 60 without breast cancer positive, without estrogen positive breast cancer, we should all be on hormones. And the Women's Health Initiative, when Matt Lauer went on the Today Show in 2001, 2, whenever it was, and said, you're going to get breast cancer for being on HRT, my mother's generation, the entire generation, went off of hormones. My generation has been wary of it because of their generation. And what we know now is that those Women's Health Initiative findings were reported in a faulty manner, and they were reported for just the oral estrogen. That the estrogen that I take 2 types. I take Divigel that I put on my thigh, which is a cream, or it's a gel, and then I have vaginal estrogen as well. And I recommend both for women under 60. Now, if you're over than 60, it doesn't make sense to go on hormone replacement at that point because it's too late. So you're at higher risk of Alzheimer's, you're at higher risk of dementia, you're at higher risk of osteoporosis, higher risk of a bunch of adverse health outcomes. However, if you're over 60, you need to get a prescription for vaginal estrogen right now, because what this urologist, Dr. Rachel Rubin, who's done all the studies, has told me, you get on that and you stay on it for life. And that all these women who are elderly in hospitals, for example, are getting UTI after UTI after UTI, and they're being treated with antibiotic after antibiotic after antibiotic, and those antibiotics stop working. I was put on a low dose of nitrofurantoin for 7 years because after I got my hysterectomy, I was getting UTI after UTI after UTI. Vaginal estrogen has cured that. I don't have any anymore. And now Rachel, who's sort of an activist on Twitter, has gotten a bunch of male urologists to step up to the plate. She's talked to OBGYNs. It's really about speaking up, and that's why I'm doing this thing too. Yeah.
So I won't dwell on my own situation, but I will tell you that my young gynecologist recently put me on HRT. I'm 63.
Yeah.
And so over 60, but within 10 years of menopause.
So that's it, yeah, within 10 years. It has to be, so again, addendum. If you're older than 60 but went through menopause 10 years earlier, if you're on the cusp like you are at 63 but you're within 10 years of menopause, it can still work. Yes.
We have about 5 minutes, so definitely time for a couple more.
Yeah.
I loved your book,
Thank you.
and for those people who haven't read it, it's so funny and interesting, and I've been telling everybody about it. I have 2 questions. The doctor who thought you just had gas, does he know what happened to you, that you had an appendicitis? And the other question, and I wanted to say also, when I read your book, I felt like every student in medical school should read your book, male and female.
Amen.
Yeah, and I was wondering if anybody reached out to you like it. in any organizations or medical school to try to get your book? And also, when you said you were making like $34,000 or $38,000,
39, yeah.
39, and the man next to you is making $200,000, most of us don't ask, what other people's salaries are, and you had tried to get more money and they refused. So how do we fix that?
Okay, let's go one at a time. Let me start from the last question. I'll go work backwards. The 39 versus 200, Peter had been let go, and he was so angry that when we were walking out of work that day, he said to me, remember when you were fighting for more money and they told you there's nothing more and that's what everyone's getting paid? He lied to you. I was getting paid 200 and now that's there for you, and go get it. So we need men, we need allyship. We need allyship. We need to hear what you're making, okay? What was the other, you have two questions? I'm sorry. Oh, so she said, did I ever tell the doctor that told me I had gas? So, I was in hospital for a day after that, and then I was at home, and then we all got the flu, and, it was one of those things. And I did call my former primary care physician, the female that I really liked, and I said, I'm leaving your practice because I never want to see that man again, and here's what he did. So she knows I never talked to him again. And now I'm at a primary care physician, a guy named Dr. Bertie Bregman, who was friends with my ex-husband and dated my sister, and I love him, and he's great, and I can text him whenever I need to, and he has been an amazing diagnostic. He's the one that actually, my gynecologist should have figured out the adenomyosis. He was the one that said, why is your hemoglobin 7? This doesn't make any sense, and sent me in for the test for the adenomyosis. And there's a third question. What was it? Oh, so, okay. I have not been contacted by medical schools, but I have been contacted by over 100 medical care professionals on Twitter. So I now follow a bunch of urologists, OBGYNs, they follow me. We're in constant contact over Twitter, which I just think is like the most, like Twitter has its problems, but to bring
Twitter
people,
is so great.
but to bring people together that wouldn't necessarily be able to know each other or have a conversation with each other. And so I am learning through them, they're learning through me. My daughter, who saved my life, started in medical school.
Shout out to soon-to-be Dr. Sasha Kogan.
So my daughter's in her first year of medical school, probably because of this. She saved my life, and then she went back to school, and she did the pre-med that she hadn't done yet. So I went to her medical school, and she introduced me to the head of the medical school, and she said, oh, what did you write? And anyway, so they know about the book, up in Buffalo. She's at University of Buffalo, and she lives like a few blocks from where that massacre occurred. The other thing we need to talk about, by the way, which I didn't get the chance to talk about, Black health, women's health, it is so much worse than white women's health, and it is, the more I dug into the numbers, the sadder it got. And I just saw something this morning that really, I don't remember who it was, some jerk said, well, our numbers in Alabama or Louisiana or wherever the hell it was would be, our maternal health numbers would be better if we just take the black people out. I read it 4 times, and I just thought, am I actually reading? Did he actually say that? And this on the heels of Buffalo, anyway, I don't even know what to say. It's a problem that, like all of these problems that I've discussed, deserves more care, more study, and for heaven's sake, we should not have black mothers dying in childbirth.
Amen again. Thank you, Deb. Thank you so much.